In the late 80s, I began to collect in earnest. And I didn't realise at the time that it was a wonderful time to try and buy art. Yeah, so this one is very striking, and I'm being told by the staff at Walsall, this is Derek Jarman, 1998, but it's a screen print produced from a painting that Maggie Hamling did 3 weeks after the death of Derek Jarman. This is an example of gestural painting. It's very sparse, but says everything that you need to see. And the reason it's bright blue is that this was Maggie's reference to Derek Jarman's last film called Blue. And the reason why he had this thing about blue was that after he developed AIDS, it affected his eyesight, and that he saw everything with a blue filter. Well, I knew Bill Gear, I call him Bill. He spent the last 33 years of his life in Birmingham and really did a lot to help modern art. This one, I do like it. I think I like the vibrant colours, and he told me once that his inspiration was, one of his inspirations was the sunlight coming through foliage. And we had great conversations about, is there such a thing as abstract art? This is one of the reasons why I have collected pictures, the connections with people. But I think he has only just become recognised for how important he is. And he was in the late 40s, after the Second World War, he was involved in a movement called the Cobra movement. It was rebelling against the academic approach to art and the European elite. This picture, the Spanish Nocturne, 1947, it relates to that period when Bill was involved with Cobra. But it was like the instant inspiration that they wanted. They did not want to plan their picture in an academic way. And this is Bird, 1973. And one of the things I like in art, I like the representation of birds, because I think they become so symbolistic. But this, I think, this print, I love colour as well. So it answers to the things I love, colour and birds. I was talking about my love of birds and how they can act as symbols in art. And Joseph Herman, I admire him, and I found out about him when I was studying Epstein. Herman was a refugee. These three are only part of a set of 54, and these came right at the end of his life. It's really interesting because it's telling the story of migration, of his life, how he moved from place to place, and he put statements by the side of them. So these were called, this group were called The Song of the Migrant Bird, and he produced them in 1999. which is not necessarily comfortable. I do not like cottages with roses round the door. I like something that worries me, challenges me, makes me think, and usually has some universal application. So when I look at Keith Vaughan, he was a troubled soul. What makes him a great painter is that he tried to apply his own personal worries, his own anxieties, and turn them into something universal. It's mysterious, it's sometimes menacing, and so that's, again, narrative and symbolism, which I love. Yeah, so this very bright picture by Michael Rothenstein. It's called The Garden. This, again, is one of my interests, that I'm interested in the process of printmaking, and I particularly love woodcuts and lino cuts. And this is a woodcut. I love the joie de vivre of Rothenstein. And you can see at the bottom of the picture, the birds are about 6 times as big as the human beings. I have moved towards more abstract art, or abstraction in art. And yet here we are. This is very representational. It's Laura Knight, and it's called Gemini, and it's an aquatint, which means several processes of the etching process. But I can't believe this is true, but she was the first all-woman exhibition in 1965 at the RA. So, I mean, now I think we just find that very difficult to understand. Yeah, well, here we are, back to some uncomfortable art. Another strand in my likes and dislikes, I love the surrealists. Again, I love being unsettled and made to think. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the surrealists put a mirror up to the world and said, no, look again. And here we have John Melville, but this is a very savage attack on institutions. And when you look at this, you've got the board member with an incredibly long tongue, you've got the female secretary, or is she a board member, with only one eye, and also the skeleton, or is he Death, has the largest notepad, so is he in charge of the meeting? Well, we were talking about Sutherland and Graham Sutherland, and this is Tower of Birds, 1975, and it's a lithograph. And Towers of Objects and Animals were one of Sutherland's motifs, and if one looks at it, nothing's quite as you would expect it to be. And I mean, there's a bird feeding its young, but what's the context? Everything's out of scale, and so it's quite unsettling. In this section, which Julie Brown, I think, did a wonderful job of creating a separate room to show the St Ives artists in my collection. One of the reasons why I'm so fond of Wilhelmina Barnes-Graham's Collage 127, on the surface one would say, well, this is abstract, isn't it? This is what you like. But this has its own narrative, and I think the more you delve into so-called abstract art, you realise that sensation, movement, and very sparing use of colour, as she has here, to my mind, creates dynamics and a narrative. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not after power and glory, but one of my rewards is to sing the praise of what I regard as such a wonderful art gallery. And if it brings it to more attention, well and good.